It's with sadness that I address the House on this bill tonight, because I don't own a home. Probably won't for a while, even with all of the different tools and mechanisms and privilege that I do have access to as a Member of Parliament. But I know in my experience pre-being an MP that, you know, as renters, we don't ask for a lot. We're only asking for a roof over our head. We're only asking that when we pay our rent on time, that we get the entitlements that are legally provided for.
Then you will enjoy living in a mouldy home.
Place where we don't get sick from the black mould all over the roof.
Oh.
We only ask that the bathrooms that we use, that the hot water is running. We only ask that there aren't mushrooms growing out of the shower.
Hey, I like
that the roof
those
doesn't leak on our
mushrooms.
head. But somehow in Aotearoa, that's become too much to ask for. But actually, we don't ask for what we deserve, because there's more than 1 million of us. And I read a quote. It's interesting. It's been interesting being based in Wellington Central and reading about the slumlords that used to exist in our urban centres, and how back in the day is so similar to how things are now for renters in New Zealand. Because somehow if you live in one of those slum houses and one of those slum flats that has become normalised in our country, you're looked down upon. And this bill is an example of the way that you are looked down upon. But if you own the slums, if you're a slumlord and you own 20 of those things, somehow our society privileges that. Somehow our society and our systems applaud that kind of behaviour. Because at the end of the day, this bill is actually about the rich getting richer. Because we live in a country where housing isn't treated as a human right. It's treated as an opportunity for people to make money. And that, to me, is morally bankrupt. Because as I've said over and over and over again on this bill, how can anybody be expected to live a decent life if they don't have a roof over their head? And the answer to that is obvious and clear. You can't. You can't live a decent or meaningful life. You can't go and get a job. You can't look after yourself. You can't raise your family.
She's telling me black mould is actually bad?
Now, today we've spent the entire day canvassing this bill and trying to understand, trying to give the government the benefit of the doubt, actually, to actually try and see, is there a basis for this decision? We asked over and over and over again, we asked the Minister of Housing, we asked the Associate Minister of Housing, what is the evidential basis that underpins the rhetoric that this government has provided around bringing back no-cause evictions? And they tell us over and over again, it's about helping landlords and property managers take a chance on riskier tenants. Well, first of all, what is a risky tenant? Who are we talking about when we're saying these so-called risky tenants? Are we talking about
I know the answer to that question. It's Māori people.
Are we talking about disabled people? Like, if you're going to say that that's your rationale, then be very clear and very specific about who it is that you're talking about. And also, even if that was the case, then where is the evidence to show that this would even allow for property managers and landlords to take a chance? Because that doesn't exist. And that's because this bill is simply a product of the coalition agreement, the infamous coalition agreement that somehow happens to supersede every other agreement, every other treaty, every other international convention in this country. And they've decided that that's what they're going to do. And so they've worked backwards. They've worked backwards to try and make the evidence work and to try and make a case for no-cause evictions. But it hasn't worked, because you look at the regulatory impact statement, you look at the evidence, you look at the data, you listen to the people that came and spoke to us about this bill, and it becomes clear that there is no basis for this bill. It's purely political. And even with the policy problem, there are so many ways that you could try and encourage landlords to take a chance on riskier tenants. There are lots of different ways that you can make this work. But no, the outcome was already determined within the coalition agreement, and so that's what they've pursued. But it's really strange that they've pursued that, because there's not even support within the property industry for no-cause evictions, because 53% of people who submitted on this bill, who were representing property managers or landlords, or were themselves those two things, don't even support this bill. And then you look at the public's perspective, 97% of people don't support this bill. So there's actually not a lot of support for this bill, but I think the government knows that and understands that. And like my colleague Kieran McAnulty was saying, that's why they've couched it in all the fluff. They've fluffed it up so that it detracts from the fact that there is no basis for no-cause evictions. And the reason there is no basis for no-cause evictions, because you look at the way that they have, that kind of law has been applied around the world, and it has resulted in nothing but increased homelessness and chaos and destruction of people's lives. And the fact that it's been couched in all this fluff and the pet bonds, which we could get into that as well, because the pet bond provisions aren't even as great as they've been touted to be, it's been couched in all this fluff because I think that the government isn't ashamed to be bringing back no-cause evictions. And sadly, as we watch the results and the destruction that will come from this decision that we are about to make, sadly, we're going to look back at this and we are all going to feel ashamed that we allowed this to happen. But I'm not surprised, because we've got a pro-landlord government. We've got a government made up of politicians who we're made up of a government who, by and large, own multiple properties. And that is the problem. There should be more people in this room who have never owned a property in their house, because maybe then we'd get better decisions that actually treat housing as the human right that it needs to be treated as. But the thing is we live in a democracy, and there are actually more of us than there are of you. There are more renters in this country than there are landlords, and I think that, thank you for doing this no cause evictions, Mahi, because I think renters will actually recognise their power in numbers and utilise that, and this is going to be a one-term government. Not just because of all of this, but because of everything else that the government has decided to do. So let's use the last 2 minutes to talk about solutions, because that's a big piece of criticism that we always get. We're always quick to point out the harm, but we never point out the solutions. So I'll tell you what the solutions are. First of all, we need rent controls, because you'll never understand, they might never understand what it feels like to have an unexpected rent increase sprung on you at a time where you don't have the financial means to actually pay that rent, and the anxiety and the despair that it causes people when those kinds of decisions are sprung on them. So we need rent controls. We need a rental warrant of fitness system that actually looks at the dilapidated and poor and disgusting state of rental housing in New Zealand, speaking from someone living in Wellington, where we are notorious for the quality of our housing. But most importantly, we need a mass public housing build program, because the core problem here is capitalism. And it's the way, and it is the way, funny, that's always the root of all problems. We always arrive back at that point, don't we, guys? We always arrive back at that point. Because in this country, we treat housing like a game of Monopoly, like a business, like a thing to be profited off of, and that is fundamentally and morally bankrupt. Because again, people don't get to choose whether or not they have a house over their head or a roof over their head. People don't get to make that option. You cannot live a meaningful or decent or productive life, economy people, if you don't have a roof over your head. So that's why we are in full, staunch opposition to this bill, and will continue to do so, and look forward to putting our rental policies in place in 2026. Kia ora.
Now, I'd like to bring up something.
Socialist hat.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up something that Kiwi Skirt has just put up there. I can confirm from the 2022 campaign, Tamatha Paul spent $24,700 on a campaign, which was the highest non-mayoral candidate spending for the 2022 local body elections. So I think that might actually explain partly what she is saying, because I'll be honest, if I had a councillor salary of over $100,000 a year, followed by an MP salary of $170,000 a year, I probably I'd probably have quadrupled the size of my KiwiSaver. I probably would, I wouldn't be feeling like on the bones of my ass with $25,000 a year, which is what I'm earning, or business is about $65,000 a year. Basically, it's that might be evident on her own ones. I can tell you right now, I probably would be better at saving. I mean, I'm someone who, I feel like I'm broke all the time, but I can tell you right now, I don't have a vehicle that breaks down.
I am not going to comment on any Green Party member's financial situation. That is not no. I'm going to step away from that discussion with a 10-foot pole.
And I'm just thinking, just to put that into context, I do also know. I think it was Wellington Central was one of the highest. It wasn't the highest green electoral spend, but it was near up there. The highest green electoral spend was actually Rongotai Julian Genta, who, yes, I do believe she does own her house in the Rongotai electorate, because I think she lived, Berhampore is the suburb she lives in, because that was where she rode the bike from to Wellington Hospital to give birth to her second child.
Yeah. Right. I think. Oh, sorry. You go on, Laura.
No, I lost my train of thought. I was gonna give a monologue, but I got distracted.
Yeah, right. No biggie. I think I just wanted to. I don't know if there was much more of the show left, but I think I've kind of exhausted everything there is to say on this particular issue. I think I'll probably be signing off. But yeah, it was definitely it was a good speech to end it off on. I agree with most of what she said, so it's good.
You sure you don't want to wait for Cameron Luxton?
Oh yeah, bring him on.
I think I've 90 minutes is probably around the max of what I can justify.
Cameron wins the dipshit of the day award. So yeah, well, this.